What you got to say about Project 2025?
Have you heard of Agenda 47?
Say what?
Agenda 47.
Nah.
It's the actual platform that Trump is going to push when he becomes president. It's listed on his official campaign website. Project 2025 is not to be found there. Matter of fact, Project 2025 was created by a conservative think tank named the Heritage Foundation.
It's supposed to make it illegal to be
Has
homeless.
nothing to do with Trump. Trump has neither endorsed nor supported this platform. He has his own.
But I saw on BET.
I don't care what any Hollywood elite or BET Awards show hosted by Taraji P. Henson have told you about Project 2025. It is not a talking point of President Trump's campaign, nor is it something that he's interested in. It's just another tool to fearmonger you and to just continue to vote for the same people over and over again and never breaking the cycle of chaos that we see within the black community. Once again, just look at the decades long of Democrat control over black cities.
Uncle Tom.
It makes sense, man. But listen, do you? Be mad at what you want to be mad at, but you ain't mad at Trump.
Man, shut up, coon.
I am sure, I am certain that all of you saw, just like I did, and I didn't even know what it was, the left freaking out about Project 2025, right? So much so that Trump came out and said, I don't even know what Project 2025 is. I don't know if he disavowed it explicitly, but he essentially said, I have nothing to do with Project 2025.
We have nothing to do with Project 25.
I don't even know what the hell it is.
I don't know anything about it.
The main Project 2025 document outlines 4 main aims: restoring the family as the centerpiece of American life, dismantling the administrative state, defending the nation's sovereignty and borders, and securing what they believe to be a key to a good life, which is found primarily in family, marriage, children, Thanksgiving dinners, and the like, the person who wrote this writes, and above all, in religious devotion and spirituality. What am I supposed to dislike about this? So if I run for president, I want you guys to know in the future, we are going to be doing Project 2025. We're going to restore families. We're going to restore faith.
Hey, remember everybody was yelling, Trump Project 25, Project 25. Guess who just endorsed Harris? The people from Project 25.
You have to have been under a rock to not have heard of Project 2025. People are making sure you hear of Project 2025. But why do you think Project 2025 is getting pushed so? It's a fear tactic. And as Donald J. Trump has told you many times, he doesn't know anything about it. It's not his. And if you would just do a little bit of research, and I do mean a little bit, by going to his website, you will see that his agenda is actually listed on his website. His agenda and everything that he's standing for in this election is all listed out for you. I've done the legwork for you, and in this multi-part series, I am going to break down the different parts of his agenda, and we will highlight those parts that I think most of you would be most interested in. I am Stephanie, and I am a conservative commentator, and it's so much misinformation out here. It is so much information that's being given that is literally being pulled from the sky, and it's literally propaganda. And it's really time that we start giving the real education of what's happening. It is not okay that fear tactics are what's being used. Fear tactics, gender politics, and race politics are what's being used to help people decide their votes, as opposed to what should really matter to you as an American, which are the policies that the particular or the specific candidate actually stands for. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the first 10. I'm going to try. Now, I may run out of time, so we may have to stop it at 5, and I do a part 2 on today, and I'll come back tomorrow and do more. The first objective in Trump's agenda 47, is free speech initiative. It is an initiative that is being created because of what happened and has happened over literally the last 8 years. It started when he got ready to run the first time. And it is a ban on anything that you have to say that does not fit a specific narrative. We saw this, or we see this during elections, and we also saw it heavily during the pandemic that we experienced. And one of the biggest things that he talked about was the fact that as Americans, we should be able to speak freely. And in that speaking freely, ban any outlets that won't allow you to do so, or rather fine any outlets that won't allow you to do so. So that's number one. Number two is a total ban on taxpayers' dollars that are being used to free illegal immigrants. If you do not know right now, our borders are pretty much open. We literally have had thousands, I mean, a ridiculous number of illegal undocumented immigrants flooding into the United States, and our tax dollars are paying for them to automatically get food stamps, automatically have housing, automatically get a credit card with money for them to spend and buy clothes and the things they need. A credit card, it really is out of control. A credit card and a cell phone. Those are just the things I can think of off the top of my head that's being provided free of charge to these illegal immigrants. America has American citizens that it needs to take care of. America has people here who need assistance with their housing, their utilities, clothes, school, all those things. And yet where we're putting our priority are on people who are illegal in this country. Trump wants to put an end to that. Next is a probe into the intelligence community role in online censorship. Now, I believe this goes hand in hand with the free speech initiative. So I think that's pretty much self-explanatory. And so basically what a probe is an investigation. So an investigation into the intelligence committee, and if they had a role, and if so, what role they played in censoring during the global pandemic and during the election years. Next, and this is one that I want to go a little bit more in depth into, it is protecting Medicare and Social Security. And I thought this one was really interesting because people will really have you fearful. The number of people I have seen who have come over here in my comments and made statements about, well, what about losing Medicare? How would you feel if your parents or your grandparents lost Medicare and Social Security? He has a lot to say about this. So let's kind of dig into this. Under no circumstances, pop down. Under no circumstances should Republicans vote to cut a single penny from Medicare or Social Security. Republicans shouldn't punish seniors simply to fund Biden's spending spree. Biden has blown out the federal budget and wasted trillions of dollars. While we must stop Biden's out of control spending, bureaucrats in Washington should feel the pain, not hardworking Americans. Cut the billions in taxpayers' dollars going to corrupt foreign countries. Cut the mass releases of illegal aliens that deplete our social safety net. Illegal immigration costs U.S. taxpayers an estimated $140 billion annually. Cut the left-wing gender programs in our military. Cut the billions spent on climate extremism and all other forms of waste and funds. And just so you'll know, $15.3 billion is to tackle the climate crisis, and an additional $15 billion across 720 other pet projects. So that right there is directly your answer for those of you who apparently have been quite fearful about Social Security and Medicare. There it is. The plan is not to cut it. No one's thinking about cutting it. And one of the things that's a core part of the Republican Party is conservative family values. No one would want to cut the funds going to our seniors. Next is blocking China from buying up American infrastructure. Now, I know a lot of people are not, directly aware of what has been happening, but China has been buying so much in our country. Farmland was the first one that came to mind for me, but I want to share with you specifically. This is specifically what Trump said. To protect our country, we need to enact aggressive new restrictions on Chinese ownership of any vital infrastructure in the United States, including energy, technology, telecommunications, farmland, natural resources, medical supplies, and other strategic national assets. When I'm president, I will ensure that America's future remains firmly in American hands, just as I did when I was president before. This is extremely important because while you're not paying attention, China is coming up buying those things that we are dependent on as a country. Now, this is going to come back up in another one in a little bit, but it's important for you to be awake and aware. And you never hear people talking about these things. It's happening every single day. Another example of this is one of the conversations we're often having, like the last year, is how corporations now own more homes than American citizens. And this happened during the global pandemic. Big corporations such as BlackRock came in and began to buy up all of the homes, and now they're renting it. The Global Economics Forum told you guys years ago that Americans will own nothing and be happy. And that is a really great example of that happening. And here we go with China coming into America, buying up our infrastructure. So I'm going to pause here because this is 8 minutes. And so today we'll go into a 2-minute video.
You may have heard of Project 2025, but this is from Agenda 47. And you can read all of these on his website. First, he promises that he will carry out the largest domestic deportation operation in history. He will also ask for the death sentence for anyone convicted of human trafficking. He will close the Department of Education and return all education standards to the states to decide. He will put prayer back into school, and he will criminalize any race-based advantage programs. He will end the Affordable Care Act. He will ban gender-affirming care for adults and children, and he will ban any federal dollars from going towards gender-affirming care, which means anyone with government-provided health care will no longer be able to access gender-affirming care except for Viagra and Cialis. Those will still be available. He will propose a constitutional amendment that gives a term limit to Congress. He will deploy the Department of Justice to investigate the Biden crime family and any of his adversaries or political rivals. He will immediately pardon all of the January 6thers, and he will create a task force to investigate anyone who arrested, charged, or imprisoned a January 6er. He will increase the penalties for underage criminal offenders, strengthen immunity for police officers, and deploy the National Guard to patrol woke cities. On day one, he will reassess our participation in NATO and says that every European country needs to pay the United States for protection. He will also restore the wonderful travel ban for Muslims coming to America. He will build freedom cities. This is 10 new cities built on federal land. He will award them to areas with the best development proposals, and he will prioritize moving young families to these freedom cities. He will kill all e-vehicles and e-vehicle legislation, seeking to replace that with the development of a flying car. He believes that we could create a car that vertically takes off. He will remove all of the limits on American natural gas exports and drill baby drill for oil domestically. He will impose a tariff of up to 60% on Chinese imports. He will extend the 2017 tax cuts and drop the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%. He will push Congress to pass legislation that would give every American the right to concealed carry anywhere at any time. And he will revoke any gun restrictions or legislation that seeks to inhibit people's ability to own guns that's been passed in the last several years. He will demand that Europe pay back all the money we gave Ukraine, and then he will use all of that money to recruit for the American military. And he will take billions and billions of dollars from private university endowments by taxing, fining, and suing the universities. He specifically names Harvard in this one. And then he will use that money to create the American Academy. It is a free online college that will be free of wokeness that he will force employers to recognize as a bachelor's degree equivalent. So that's Agenda 47.
What is Trump's actual agenda for this presidential term if elected? Surprising to many, it's not Project 2025. It's not his at all, but Agenda 47. And this is part 2, day 1 of me covering each of the pieces of legislature he would like to bring up during his term as president. I'm Stephanie, a conservative commentator, and it's so much misinformation out there. I thought that I would make a series just for you that will detail every piece of his agenda. This should be a 5-day series covering each of those with 10 pieces covered every single day. So just a heads up, if you want to help educate others, be sure to share this out. let's jump right into it. So the next piece is to save education and put it back into the hands of the parents. So let's cover what's going to be included in that. Number one, cut federal funding for any school or program pushing critical race theory, gender ideology, or other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content to our children. They're there for education and education only. Direct the Department of Justice and Education to open civil investigations into any district that has engaged in race-based discrimination, including discrimination against Asian Americans. Because the Marxism being taught in schools is aggressively hostile towards Judeo-Christian teachings, aggressively pursue potential violations of the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause of the Constitution. Veto the sinister effort to weaponize civics education, keep men out of women's sports, create a new certifying body to certify teachers who embrace patriotic values and understand that their job is not to indoctrinate, but to educate. I'm kind of skipping through some of these just to save a little bit of time this time. Abolish teacher tenure for K through 12 and adopt merit pay. Drastically cut the number of school administrators, including the DEI bureaucracy. Adopt the Parental Bill of Rights that includes complete curriculum transparency and a form of universal school choice. Next on the list is stopping chemical, physical, and emotional manipulation of our children. This includes revoking Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care, a process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition. Ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote and pay for these procedures. Pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutation. Declare that any hospital or healthcare provider participating in the chemical or physical manipulation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare and will be terminated from the program. Support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children. Direct the Department of Justice to investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients. Illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers, which are in no way licensed or approved for use. Direct the Department of Education to inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they should be trapped in the wrong body, that they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination and the elimination of federal funding. As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, we will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique. Okay. Ask Congress to pass a bill establishing the only genders recognized in the U.S. government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth. Title IX prohibits men from participating in women's sports and protects the parents from being forced to allow their minor child to assume a new gender identity without the parents' consent. And that was for stopping chemical, physical, emotional manipulation of our children. Next is immediate de-escalation of wars. And of course, we know currently that is Ukraine and Russia, or Russia's aggression against Ukraine. And then the Gaza war, from Gaza's aggression against Israel and now Israel's retaliation. So the war going on there. Missile defense shield. So for those who don't know what that is, so basically this is something Israel, this is what saves Israel, is there is a dome. And with that dome, the majority of the missiles that come at Israel are blocked and dissolved or done away with, which I think is really amazing. A couple of years ago, I spent a few weeks in Tel Aviv, and, you know, just the feeling of safety of knowing that I was there and I didn't have to worry about a missile hitting, you know, my friends' homes while I'm there. And not even period, but you know, I'm there. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, if something happens, I feel like something's blocking it. So Trump feels like the United States should have the exact same thing, because national security, you want to make sure you're protected. You don't want anyone to be able to send a missile to the United States and any of American citizens or Americans get harmed in any way. Next is addressing and putting an end to Chinese espionage by immediately removing Chinese intelligence. Now, this is something that Trump did start his first presidency, and one of the first things Biden did when he came in was remove it. Biden is really okay with you know, Chinese buying up our important infrastructures and the farmland and the tech and the telecommunications. That's okay. And then also having Chinese spies here in the United States. And Trump said, absolutely not. The way he was able to remove this is that he spoke about it as if it was discrimination against the Chinese. So Trump is bringing that back. And last but not least for today in part 2, we made it, is making, and I really love this one. I love a lot of them actually, but making America energy independent. Our energy is why the spending on energy is why this is the worst inflation in 58 years. And becoming energy independent will alleviate some of that strain for America's middle class. Currently, we are dependent specifically on China and elsewhere for our energy. And so Trump wants to make sure that America becomes energy independent. It's actually one of the things that, you know, the entire thing about Make America Great Again, the very small-minded are thinking about things that it doesn't even stand for. But it's about bringing those things back to America, about ensuring that jobs come back to America. A lot of the parts that we even use for our military are contracted over in China. A lot of these pieces and things is really important. Almost everything that you buy is going to say made in China. And so Trump's real agenda has been to bring back the security here in America, for us to have jobs, for there to be a secure middle class again. And I think people, I know people see Make America Great Again, and they have this other narrative. And I was going to say you've created it, but the reality is you didn't create it. The left told you that's what it was. Media picked it up and has continued to push it. And that's the thing about television programming. And I'm actually going to make a TikTok specifically about this. It's called Programming for a Reason. I know they don't talk about it anymore as in television programming, news programming, but that's what it is, and that's what it's been. It's programming. You are being programmed. So I know where you got it from, but we have to really start working to educate ourselves on what does this really mean. Start having open, honest dialogue that is not filled with emotion. That's where the problem comes in. You can tell in the comments, just so silly and so emotional. We have to start practicing stoicism so that we can move with logic and not with that silly emotion, because when you make decisions from emotions, you make mistakes. I hope you've enjoyed this part. I think I am going to go live every evening this week to talk a little bit about the pieces that we cover that specific day. I want to say I'm going to go live about 7 Eastern Standard Time. So make sure your notifications are turned on.
Next time you hear somebody trying to malign the Heritage Foundation as a far-right extremist platform designed to destroy America and anything they put forth is unethical, ask them this question: how do they like their health care? Because believe it or not, the Heritage Foundation is responsible for developing, you guessed it, Obamacare and Affordable Care Act. This is why I said in my interview with Marquise Francis of NBC News that I believe in critical thinking and the ability to say, I like this, but hate that. And that's how we should move forward on anything that we hear come across social media. There's a lot of things that you can agree with in Project 2025 or Agenda 47, and some things you don't agree with. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, no matter how dirty that water may be.